Hi everyone. Today we did get just a little bit of grinding higher here. You can see one candle was basically all of the gains, about 0.5% on that candle, and then we did end up giving a fair amount of that back, just slightly positive, grinding right on this trend line here. We are technically above it. This is the trend line we've been watching. We did get above it and we did close above it. So right now that is slightly bullish, but let's take a look at all of the charts and see if we can find anything different for tomorrow. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. So in news today, Trump came out and said he thinks we will have a deal with India, and you got Secretary Bessent also saying they think they are close to a deal with one of the most populous countries, which is apparently India. He didn't want to say a specific country for whatever reason, but he also says they've had substantial talks with Japan as well as South Korea. So it seems like they're talking to all of the most important people, at least for now. Seems like China is not going to bend, so we're kind of ignoring that. If we can get India done, that would be huge. And then Japan would be another major player. And then if the EU kind of signs on to the same deal that India and Japan have kind of come to at this point, that would be amazing. And that would really be the vast majority of the global economy. Obviously, China being the outlier, it really would separate them from the rest of the world if we did get really those three entities, in my opinion. And that would set up the framework for all of these other countries to be able to kind of piggyback off of that potential trade deal. So is this going to happen? I think so. I think it's just a matter of time. Obviously, the waiting game has been quite painful for markets, but if we do get this deal done, that should be quite bullish. And even with the news here today, this came out about 30 minutes before market close. That did prop up markets a little bit. They were starting to fade, but then we ended up holding up relatively flat into the close. So right now, this is some bullish news, and I do think it will happen eventually. Moving over to fear and greed, we finished at a 38 from a 36, just continues to slowly grind higher, pretty much the same as what the price action has been doing. And you can see that here, just slowly grinding higher. Strength, again, very slowly starting to move up from these pretty depressed levels. Breadth has moved up. Breadth has had a nice little move over the past couple days, and you can see that jump here today actually was very substantial. So we'll take a look at that on the market breadth later, but that's in greed. That is the first of the three major indicators that I look at on here that is into greed. Interesting. We'll see if that has any more legs to it. Otherwise, put call ratio still fear, volatility still neutral. Safe haven demand has pulled back. Bonds have outperformed slightly here, but equities have been relatively unchanged over the last 20 days. On a net basis, you can see there's obviously been a lot of chop in there, but over the last little bit here from 20 days ago, pretty flat. And then looking at junk bonds continues to be in greed, so no movement on junk bonds versus investment grade. Moving over to seasonality, just a quick reminder, the May time period for the normal years, not super great, but post-election, May months can be quite bullish as we head into that second half of the year, as we get close to it. Pretty bullish into that kind of end of second quarter time frame. Obviously, that's a little ways from now, but just keep this in the back of your mind. If we make it through April, maybe we see a little bit of May buying on that post-election year. Moving over to the economic calendar, you can see red across the board, absolutely not what we wanted to see. Goods trade balance got even more negative than the forecast. Consumer confidence, even worse of a step down from the previous read than was expected. JOLTS job openings, even worse there as well. Atlanta Fed GDP, also worse. We have GDP for the Eurozone, GDP for the US, as well as core PCE data tomorrow. So lots of data early in the session. Is this going to be the beginning of the spook for the markets? Is this why we've held up so well despite the slowing price action that we've seen? Or is it just the hopium around potential tariff deals, potentially another bullish driving force? But again, I just don't buy it. I've been saying it for a while. And then for Thursday, you do have a little bit of soft data, and that is expected to be okay. Manufacturing PMI, not as good. Global manufacturing PMI, still relatively okay above that 50 line. Moving over to earnings here, we did get Visa, Coca-Cola. You can see those did okay. Coke missed on the top line, which was interesting, but overall not bad, just by a little. Honeywell also missing on the top line, Starbucks missing on both. They said they were seeing a bit of a turnaround, but not super great. But look at UPS beating on both. Definitely interesting to see that. Does that mean the economy is still in a little bit better shape than we thought that it was, at least for now? I think that's potentially the case. You can see GM beating on both. You like to see that as well. And then looking at tomorrow, don't forget you got Microsoft, Meta, Qualcomm, Caterpillar, huge companies for tomorrow. Young brands out there, Vici Properties, another one on the list. And then for Thursday, you have Apple, Amazon, MasterCard, McDonald's. Thursday, another huge day in terms of market cap, moving the market. So tons and tons of earnings. Monster Beverage, always fun to watch in these earnings seasons. And then we round out the week with the big oil companies. Moving over to the charts, you can see a pretty decent update, about 0.5%. Still could not get up to that upper trend line, so we're right on top of this one. We chopped on it yesterday, held at it today. Momentum still bullish, RSI still slowly drifting higher. Are we going to make it to this 55 EMA on the daily chart at 563.17? I think that is absolutely a possibility. I would expect a lot of stops sitting in that area if we did get there. I'm not 100% sure that that is going to happen quite yet. And then looking at that hourly chart for the price action for today, you can see tried to go a little higher pre-market, gave that back, filled the gap and then some, and then we ended up rallying mid-session, pulled back once again, struggling at the high of day from Monday, and then we did end up pushing through that on the 12 o'clock candle, and then faded into the close. You can see 6 hours of bearish price action to round out the end of the session, and then we pulled back to this trend line here. So again, we are right on top of it. If this fades here, that is going to be quite bearish. I thought maybe we were going to get a push through to this 55 EMA right about here, but we ended up holding the 21 and rallying up. So this short-term trend is still bullish. You have to respect the trend. It's still bullish, and we are holding the trend line here. 559.76 is the next level. Right now, momentum is basically zero. You can see this is generally starting to fade on that upward price action, but we've done it. Another bullish day. That is 6 bullish days in a row. Are we going to get a bearish day, or are we going to drive higher to that 559 area? Certainly a possibility. That would be about a 1.25% move. I don't know necessarily that we can get that without some positive kind of catalyst here, but if this 550 breaks, which is still about 0.5% lower from current, that would give you a break of that 55 EMA. Then 540 is your next level, which would give you that potential for about a 2% down move from there. So that's going to be what we're looking for, either a 559 level or a 540, watching that 550 as kind of a midpoint. Moving over to the Tasty charts here just for a second, you can see that 8 EMA continues to be support. 551.16 continues to hold here. This is the 4 hour, and that continues to be good. You can see we did drift below the second ATR band. We were above it here, we drifted to it, and then now we are below it. So that would be your upper resistance currently. That is 556.51. If you could get through there, your upper band is 561.90, which is just above that 559 level that we just talked about on the previous. Slowly grinding, still technically bullish conditions. That trailing stop did step up here a little bit today. That is now 538.56. But I really wanted to look at the hourly chart here just for a moment. You can see this is still relatively healthy. We're in the middle of the range, chopping, did test support, did rally up, did test support again, did rally up, but we're still not able to get to that upper band, so it's not as bullish as you would want to see if you were looking for a bullish continuation. You can actually see the volume on the session. The highest volume candle was a bear candle right at the end of the session, which did lead to a little bit more selling. So just keep that in mind. Structurally still bullish, but absolutely flashing some warning signs. Moving over to the NASDAQ, similar thesis here, about 0.5%. Resistance is still 477.84. We got really close to it today after getting back below 471 and then rallying through. Pretty wide ranging candle here. You can see we were down about 0.5% and then ended up positive about 0.5%. So if you're looking for buys and you ended up getting them at the 471 level, not a bad trade. You could be looking for that push to 477.84. I did not take that trade. I didn't actually see the touch of the 471 level. You can see it here though. We did pull back to it early in the session, did get the nice push off of there. Almost retested it 471 here at the 11 o'clock candle and then got the continuation higher. So interesting. Didn't quite see the push to the 477 level. I thought we might get it here, just get an overthrow of the trend line, but this trend resistance continues to be quite powerful, and you can see we ended up selling pretty aggressively off of that level. And then look at the after hours. Really, really strong selling. You can see we were around 475 and we ended up falling about $2 in the after hours. So pretty substantial sell in the after hours, waiting to see if this continues lower. Again, if 471 breaks, just like we saw on the SPY charts, there's a lot of room here to that next level. From the current after hours price, that would be about a 3% down move, and I think that could come fairly quickly if this zone here breaks. Moving over to the Tasty charts, similar to the SPY charts, we are still above that 8 EMA here right now. That is at 472.20. Is that zone going to break and we're going to see a fall down to 466? I certainly think that is a possibility. You can see how this is slowly flattening here. The ATR bands are headed higher. Second ATR band right now, 477.36. But it looks more likely that we're going to hit the midpoint before anything happens. Could we pull back to the midpoint and get a continuation higher? Absolutely. This is still bullish conditions on the 4-hour chart. Trailing stop right now is at 458.86. And then looking at that hourly chart here just for a moment, again, still bullish conditions, but you can see how this is slowly fading. We came into this zone really aggressive, the momentum fading, price action flattening out, not showing those same kind of gains. Did not even hit that second ATR band over the last couple days. We're right in the middle of the range here. Is this going to pull back to the trailing stop, 468.28? Certainly a possibility as well. Could we push to that upper ATR band around 479? I think that is a little bit less likely in my opinion. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, these have been super consistent. The Russell's up another 0.5%, clean through that 195.15 level, closed well above it, closed right at the high from the previous day. Did get the gap fill now, so we're waiting to see, is that gap fill going to be the turning point, or are we going to drive through there? Potentially up to that 202 area. So far, this has been a really bullish setup, and I really haven't been participating in it as much as I should have been. I did like it here. You can see the much higher low setup, structurally pretty good and continues to look good. And then the Dow getting above 404.47, looking for the push here to 410 and then potentially 412 as your next resistance. Still has not made it back to the highs from 9 April or that 14 April, but overall, structurally still looks good. Moving over to the Mag 7. The Mag 7 had a nice day as well, but still could not get above the level. 273.41 is still the critical level. That's where we stopped to the penny on 9 April. Still cannot get above that level. And what a move. So we had a huge move here. 9 April, really strong push, 14%. Nearly round trip that entire move. Got the higher low setup. Continuation back to that level. Is this going to be consolidation breakdown, or are we going to push through here to that higher high? Still remains to be seen. Momentum is bullish. RSI is bullish. Everything says this should drive through here. Potentially we're waiting on earnings still. That could be another driver, right? So maybe we pause here until we get those major earnings over the next couple days. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft. Apple had an okay day, 0.5%, but still hitting that major resistance, 211.55. Could not get above it, and this momentum is just about maxed out. It is slowing dramatically. It wouldn't shock me to get maybe one more flat day here and then start to see this roll over. Of course, you have earnings for Apple coming up, so that's going to be a big driver, of course. And then looking at Microsoft, went right to the level that we expected, 394.22. If it can get through there, maybe 413 is back in the cards. We watched this consolidation for forever. It felt like we were in this zone from February all the way until February of 25. So we were here in terms of price action for a year. And then we had that bigger breakdown, went all the way to 344. That is definitely on sale, in my opinion, for Microsoft. Did get bought up pretty dramatically. Now we are headed back towards that 413 area, towards that 200. I still expect it to get rejected from here, but if we did get that push, there's a nice potential of a couple percentage points, potentially as much as 4.5% in that zone. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA, you got Tesla up 2% right to that 200 SMA, still could not get above it. That is at 291.71 right now, and we are right on top of it by just a few pennies, looking for that 301.93 area. If it rejects from here, that's going to be very bad. I think we would at least pull back to the 250 area, but right now we're right at it. On a price basis, you are above it by a few pennies, but I would watch this closely. I would call that a touch, and we'll see if we get the continuation through there on Tesla tomorrow. And then you got NVIDIA basically flat, up just 29 cents, still paused in this area. NVIDIA is, of course, waiting to see what the CapEx numbers are for Microsoft, Apple, and Amazon to see how they are going to do in their next earnings. Moving over to staples versus discretionaries here, you can see staples was positive about 1%, right back to this trend line. We dipped to 79.90, so that was an interesting buy opportunity. Dipped below it and then got back above it, so you could have bought at the level, could have bought at this level as well. At the level break continuation through there, I would have been patient here at the trend line. Interesting. Want to see this get a step to bullish momentum. The RSI slightly bullish as well, starting to curve back up. Is this a higher low setup? I would say so for now, but we do need to see that trend line break. And then discretionaries here push through that 197.14 level after retesting it and still looking for that 200.53 touch. We have not gotten that over the last 2 days. Either way, though, still up just short of 1%. Moving over to real estate and transports, I wanted to talk about these. We haven't talked about them in a long time, but you can see we got a huge sale here with real estate. I said buy it up. Anything below 40 is a big sale in my opinion, and that has been a great trade. I was definitely buying some real estate in here, and that has been great so far. In this zone, 41 to 42 is a little bit expensive. Definitely anything above 42 is expensive. You can see we have not been able to maintain that price action for any length of time, but anywhere below here, 35 to 37, buy it up. Should expect a higher price at some point in the future. Even in a recessionary environment, I like real estate at those prices. And then looking at transportation here, I just want to highlight how much this is sold off from the recent high. You can see 25% from top to bottom since February, and transports really have not recovered at all. You can see we're up just about 10% off of the bottom, consolidating. I would guess this is going to roll over. We have not seen that transports continuation. And really, for me, this is a big indicator of the economy. Transports have not recovered. I don't think the economy is really going to recover. Even if the stock market does so a little bit in the short term, I'm not expecting that to be able to hold over the medium to long term. Moving over to breadth, 20 and 50-day breadth. Look at 20-day all the way into the 80s. That is just about peak. It does not go much higher than that. You can see here we got to an 83.1. Back here we got to an 83.6, 83.2. Very, very rarely do we get above the 86 number here. You can see a 91. We were there for just a couple of days before we saw a bigger sell-off. So understand that this rally is probably culminated. Even if we're going to get that continuation into the medium to long term, I would expect a short-term pullback, potentially a higher low setup continuation if it's going to happen. But right now we are at those peak levels on 20-day breadth. 50-day did finally get that push continuation to the 40 level. We did get the touch there. We're back into this consolidation range here. So this was a nice low, higher low setup, same as what we saw on markets. But this 40 level, this was resistance before. We did get well above that 9 April area. So clean divergence there on breadth and price. Are we going to reject from here? This is a critical zone to watch here over the next 2 days as we head into all of those major earnings. Moving over to the dollar has been abysmal, continues to be relatively flat. Tried to recover a little bit after the sell yesterday, really could not do it, just kind of consolidated and seems to be fading here as we start that next session for the Wednesday session. Momentum is slightly bullish, but price action says this should continue lower, and the dollar continues to be weak. Maybe once we get some trade deals in place, the dollar will recover, but as long as this dollar continues to hover, I just don't see the rest of markets really recovering fully. Moving over to bonds. Bonds continue to be really, really good. getting very close to this resistance area here on JNK, up about 0.25%. Again, we said this was a buying opportunity. So far, so good on bonds. Looking for these to continue back to 92, ultimately back to 100. Yields have cooled, bonds are doing well, and that should be good for the broader markets. Not as good as I hoped it would be, but so far, so good. Moving over to the VIX. The VIX did break through that level we were watching. Momentum continuing to bearish, RSI continuing to be bearish. At this point for me, the VIX could potentially move down to this zone here around the 20 area, maybe a 17% move. Do we find support in here? Potentially. Do we get a gap fill? That would be interesting. We do have a gap back here to this kind of 22 area. That would be potentially a zone of support, but realistically, I think this is probably going back to 20, which could give markets a little bit of bullishness. Again, obviously this will depend on major earnings and GDP numbers, PCE numbers, still lots of data to potentially move this around. But right now, technically, this just continues to waterfall through these levels. Moving over to my accounts, I managed to make a few dollars here. I took 3 trades, which honestly, the last of those was not a super great trade in terms of entry, and all of those were bearish here today, which again, so I was fighting the trend, but I did manage to make a little bit of money. Not the best way to make money, but I was good with my exits. I took money when the market gave it to me. Getting really close to that 140 number. That's cool. Overall, still positive on the year. Also very, very cool. Not a whole lot, but a little. It's been a fight, been a slog, recovering from some really stupid losses, but overall, you can't hate it being positive on the year when the broader markets are definitely not. So right now, watching these pivot points, not holding anything overnight, I've kind of gotten a little bit comfortable with that. I certainly could have held things over the night. Over the last couple of weeks, we've managed to be pretty bullish, but I just don't believe that it's going to sustain. Of course, we have all of that news and earnings waiting to happen, and it feels more comfortable for me to be out, especially since the medium-term trend is still a bear trend. Let me know down in the comment section what you thought of the deal with India. What do you think about a potential deal with Japan? Are those going to come through, or is it just more chatter? Let me know. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.